My name is Remy Schor. I've actually been recruiting for about 20 years. The first 15 years of my career were largely focused on technical recruiting in the agency space. And for the last 5 years, I've spent some time building teams at startups, generally focused on engineering and then some go-to-market recruiting as well. What I want to talk about today is becoming the signal through the noise. So I'll focus on that and tell you all a little bit more about what I mean. This is always a challenge, and I think it's even more so for women and non-binary folks. So how do we navigate showing up and getting noticed in a world that has often told us to stand back and blend in, right? So this is the quick agenda. I'm going to talk just for a moment about each of these things: competition, the sort of rhetoric or the discourse that's happening in recruiting right now, my suggested approach, and then how I might go about working with recruiters. So first and foremost, there are so many applicants for every role, right? So how do I navigate that? And the reality is this is totally true. There are too many applicants. There's a perception that you're maybe being screened out by AI if your resume or your profile isn't perfectly aligned. Sure, some companies, right, and some recruiting teams might set up parameters that mean that your profile isn't being properly viewed. But A, not everyone does this. And B, you really can't control for it. So I'm going to talk today about what we can control. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I recommend going about that. So from a kind of conversation standpoint, right, this is the big question in recruiting. One of the big questions. What if I don't have everything that the written job description indicates is necessary? And the reason why this became such a prevalent question is there's this like very oft-cited McKinsey study that I think was done in 2008, which quote unquote proved that men will apply to any role for which they meet 60% of the qualifications, but for women, they need to see 100% of the expected qualifications in themselves in order to apply. I believe that this research was accurate at the time. I mean, I think all research, you always want to be asking about sources and data sets, but the reality is that that's from 2008, and things are completely different now. We actually job search in a completely different way now. And in fact, the rhetoric has become so completely flipped that I actually think people are over applying. Everyone just is applying for everything now, regardless of how many skills they may or may not have. And so that's why when you look at a job description on LinkedIn and you see there's already 350 applicants, it was posted this morning, you might decide, I'm not even going to throw my hat into the ring. There's just too many people. I'm competing against all of those people. But what I'm here to tell you is most of them probably don't align at all. So if there's a good recruiter at the forefront of that search, they're going to quickly determine who isn't even in this industry or who doesn't even have the semblance of this skill set. And then you'll be in a smaller pool. So the question kind of invariably becomes, even if there's that many people and I do have a skill set that aligns, right? How do I get noticed? How do I become the signal amid all of the noise? The answer I'm going to give you, right, is network. And I'm going to talk briefly about my definition of networking. I don't mean dress up and go to every meetup and happy hour out there. Candidly, that's not really my scene. What I do mean is send every week that you're starting a job search, and even if it's preemptive, you still are employed, but you think you might start looking in the new year, every week send 5 to 10 what I call intro emails with your resume attached, and I'll come back to that in a moment. This is instead of a cover letter. I am firmly of the opinion that people aren't really reading cover letters anymore and barely reading resumes. I look at the resume to learn where someone's been doing what they've been doing, what that is they've been doing, and for how long. But the individual note, the note that I receive, again, in lieu of a cover letter via email or via LinkedIn, that shares why they're reaching out to me for this specific job, I always respond to those. In fact, those are the first people I respond to. I have 1,000 applicants for X job. Anybody who messages me directly is going to get a very quick note, like a very responsive note. It might be, hey, this isn't quite the right fit, but my contention is the more people you're actually in touch with and the more you know about where your resume sits in their job search, the better off you'll be in terms of these connections. So I mentioned every week sending out your personal intro email with a resume attached to 5 or 10 individuals. This is anybody you might have known previously, people you might not know, but with whom you have a specific connection. That could be a person in common, an event you were both at, even an industry connection, really anything real, and ask them for 15 minutes of their time. And in these conversations, they're not interviews, they're like pre-interviews. They're an opportunity for you to practice your self pitch, your me pitch, so that when you get up to bat in interviews, you can very concisely and elegantly speak about yourself and then move on to the next conversation, whatever it is. You can break the fourth wall in these conversations. That's actually what's so great about them. You can say, hey, I don't even know if you're hiring. Let me practice my me pitch on you and solicit real-time feedback. And that's going to really help you course correct for when you are in an interview that you want for a job that you actually want. It takes the pressure off those first few interviews, those first few conversations. And then lastly, I'll just say, you know, as a recruiter, again, as a recruiter at a startup, yes, I am receiving a ton of emails and LinkedIn messages and sometimes even phone calls, and that's fine. I prioritize the people that reach out to me directly. Secondarily, I go through my many, many cold applicants. And that's the prioritization that I've decided on. So I think that reaching out directly to the job poster or the recruiter or the hiring manager, if you can find them, which often you can, I think is really beneficial. And then I said this before, but I really want to reemphasize attaching your resume to those introductory emails, because sometimes I'll get cold emails, which is fine, with no resume and no LinkedIn profile. It's just a, hey, I applied. I'm super interested. Here's why. Great start. But now I have to there's 5 or 6 steps for me to track down their application. And that just slows down the process. So remember, at the end of the day, make it as easy on the recipient as possible, right? And then finally, I'll share my contact info. You all can, however this works, photograph that URL code and that'll link you right to my LinkedIn and feel free to connect.